Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got a 10-game slate here on Wednesday to choose from in the NBA. In this one, taking a look at a couple Eastern Conference foes. The Pacers are in Boston, taking on those struggling C's as of late. Take a look at that one. Also got another game video for you and our player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have our great written content for you guys all season long. And you can use our odds finder tool there to make sure you're shopping those U.S. sports books, getting the best lines available and all the juice back you can in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 10-game slate and then talk C's and Pacers.
Yeah, it should be a good one here tonight. I mean, leading off with the Bucks +2 at Cavs, definitely a great game to monitor. I kind of lean Cavs at home, but it's tough to pick that one. We got Detroit +11 at the Sixers, who are back on track for sure. They're on a back-to-back, though. The Warriors on a back-to-back +12 at Brooklyn after getting thumped by the Knicks last night. Bulls on a back-to-back +6 at the Hawks. Still think they covered there. The Hawks are strugs. The other game we break down, the Raptors are only +2 at the Knicks, who are on a back-to-back, but they cruised last night. This game we'll get to in a minute. Pacers are +10 in Boston, and the total's been bet up to 233. Blazers in a rematch with OKC. They're -4 on the road. Magic in a pick'em at Houston. Mavs in a rematch with Minnesota. They're -3 after getting crushed in the previous one. The Kings -6 at home against the Lakers, who are without AD again. Totals all the way at 240 there. And the Hornets +8 at the Clippers, who have plenty of rest. So we should see Kawhi and Paul George on the floor there tonight. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Celtics struggling. I mean, pretty shocking. We would expect them to have struggled on their West Coast road trip, but it was obviously shocking that they lost both games against Orlando back home. An Orlando team that's a really weird matchup for anyone, and I guess reintegrating Rob Williams, even though he only played 18 minutes each game, maybe threw a little bit of a wrench into things. Derek White, as you mentioned, not shooting the ball pretty well anymore. I mean, there's a lot of regression to come in general for the C's when everybody's shooting 41% from three. Like, no matter what, Grant Williams can't miss a shot. Everything they get is going in, and it was just a string of overs. Well, now they've gone under in 7 of their last 8. And again, some of that is the home road splits. You could definitely expect them to come home and light it up. I mean, their team total is all the way at 122 right now with -120 on the over. I can't get myself to bet that either way because, I mean, I think they either put the smack down on the Pacers here or they have to grind out another win. And the Pacers have been feisty, especially when they play the Celtics. I mean, they beat them twice, even after the Celtics got hot. Towards the second half of last season, Malcolm Brogdon had a big thing to do with that first one. And then they didn't win the second one. The Celtics won, but that was a shootout because Rob Williams sat and Daniel Tice was in there instead of him. So Rob, even in a playing half the game type of role on a minutes limit, he's going to make a huge impact on this team. And don't forget Papa Al's back after missing some of that road trip. And he can just sub in and take those non-Rob Williams minutes. And I mean, obviously their defensive rating much better with Rob. Since the start of January, he keyed that huge defensive surge. Their offense is also just not as good because they can't play that same kind of 5-out style where everybody can shoot. They're scoring 7 points per game fewer without him. With him in the lineup, they're hitting 2 fewer 3-pointers per game at a 35% rate versus 38%. And the pace is 2 possessions slower per game. So, I mean, the total's climbing here because Indy has that reputation for sure of getting up and down. But, I mean, the last time these teams played with Rob Williams, in January with him fully healthy, he had an 83 individual defensive rating. The team had a 93 defensive rating, and it was a 101-98 game. That's what we've historically seen from the Pacers and the Celtics. In the Pacers in this spot, 7-5 to the under when they're road dogs, 3-2 to the unders when they have a rest disadvantage, a little bit of a disadvantage here. Both teams are pretty well rested, but And their only overs recently have been against like Brooklyn with everyone sitting, against the Warriors who, can't play a lick of defense. Against teams like even like the Wolves and the Blazers, like they've still gone under here. I think this total's a little too high. I think the Celtics, when they're in get right mode and they have this much good defensive personnel on the floor, I think they have an ability to just shut down the Pacers offense. As good as Halliburton is, he was not a master facilitator the last couple times he faced the Celtics team, and he'll get the Marcus Smart treatment. Now Brogdon's on the other side, another body to throw at him. So I think the Celtics are definitely going to win this game, and I think they might keep it under. So I'd be looking at a potential tease, though. I mean, 10 points is too much for me to trust right now, but it's definitely possible that they win a blowout game here.
Yeah, it's possible. But I actually am eyeing the total as my favorite, bet in this one, just because, if anything, I could see the Pacers covering. As you said, they've been pretty good as away dogs anyway. And not necessarily against the total there. They're actually 6-9 to the over there on the road. We know their games average about 227 when they're on the road. They're scoring about 114 or so, or excuse me, 112, giving up about 114 and a half, whatever. They make fewer threes. They shoot worse on the road. Like, they're just a worse offense on the road, which is why they're struggling to go over. And they've been a little bit better on defense from the start of the season when they were just a bunch of turnstiles. And they also spent a few games playing without Miles Turner as well, as we know. But in their last five, I'll say a little bit better on defense. They've upped their opponent 3-point percent. They lowered their opponent 3-point percentage down from what it was, about 37%, down to about 35, which is good for 15th in the league. Was in the bottom 8 or so. They are giving up a bunch of free throw attempts, but they're getting back on defense. They're not allowing you to score in the fast break as well. So it's sort of their half court offense, obviously, that you wish was a little bit, or excuse me, defense that was a little bit better. But the fact that they're guarding the three so much better, in part because of the fact that Miles Turner's come back, you can sell out on the 3-point line a bit more when you have at least one shot blocker down there versus having pretty much nobody to guard the paint down low before Miles came back. So you're looking at like Jalen Smith doing that. So I think their defense is better for a reason. And then Boston, it's a little bit of the turnaround that we thought we were going to see. Like you said, there was no way they were going to shoot 40.7% from three as a team as they did for the first 25 games of the season. That's just not sustainable all season. But the regression probably went a bit too far the other way on offense. And now I think we'll come back to the mean. We all expected them to go down in offense and up in defense with the arrival of Rob Will, with the return of Al Horford, who missed a few games as well and is now playing the last 3 or so. But the turnaround is stark. As you know, in the last 6, really the last 8 games, and in part because that was the last time they played the Dubs, who seemed to have them figured out a little bit. There was some thought maybe on that West Coast road trip that the Dubs put the clamps on them in a way that might have given a little bit of a direction for other teams to be able to follow their game plan. But it's really just when that team seemed to have taken a little bit of their confidence, and since that time, their offense has gone down to the worst offensive rating in the league, which is also not something you expect to continue. It's a direct result of the guys behind Jalen and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Behind those guys, it's everything they're not doing on offense. In those last 8 games, Malcolm Brogdon's their third leading scorer with 13 a game. Please give him more time and stop playing Derek White as much, because he scored 6 points a game in that time frame, shooting 27% from the field and 20% from deep. Marcus Smart also coming back to earth from his 40% from 3 down to 32% in the last 8, 38% from the field. Actually shooting worse from the field in a couple of these games than he is from deep, including that last game that they lost to Orlando, where he was 32% from the field, yet shooting 42% from 3. So they just can't. The offense isn't really, once you collapse on them outside in the 3-point line, that's been where guys outside of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown seem to be struggling to get their offense, and that's why this team has just slowed down a lot. You look at Al Horford and Robert Williams coming back. Obviously, that's going to be a huge factor for both bettering your defense, worsening your offense. Since last season, with and without Papa Al, 106.5 defensive rating with him, 114 defensive rating without him. Rob Will, you mentioned, their defensive rating goes up 4 points per 100 when he's in the game. Their offense also goes down about 2 points per 100 period when he's in the game since last season. So it's just a slower pace of offense. It's not going to be quite the same pace and space. They're going to be attacking the rim a lot more, getting more free throws, but definitely lessening the amount of 3-pointers that they're shooting and making. And I just like that Indy is, like I said, playing a little bit better on defense, enough that I think that they can at least limit, even if this is a game where you say, okay, worst case scenario for everything we're saying is the Celtics just come out and blow the absolute doors off of Indy. They're still going to be playing better defense than they were. So even if this is a blowout and they do score their 122, 125, I think that you can depend on a few less points there from Indy if that is the case. But I think it will be a little bit closer. That's why I'm not willing to take that 10 points. A little bit more of a grind, but I'm happy to keep it under 233, especially since it's risen from its opening total of about 230.5.
Yeah, the free throws is the only thing that really concerns me, is that Indy gives up a high amount of free throws, and Boston doesn't do a great job limiting them at home. But maybe that's because Rob Williams hasn't been in there to just change every shot at the rim. But I do kind of lean on Indy's ability to guard the 3-point line. Rick Carlisle being a great defensive coach, and they faced the Celtics 4 times since they've been this juggernaut at the start of 2022 and held them to 12 threes per game at 35% clip. Granted, that hasn't led to, it's only led to 1 under, but it has led to under this total twice. And one of those times in Boston when the Celtics struggled to get it going there from deep as well. And the pace that the Pacers have changed, they were playing at like a 105 pace in 5 games, and then in these last 9, it's dropped to 98. And with those spikes, though, explaining 2 of the overs, Brooklyn and Golden State, they had a huge spike. Strangely, they had a 90 pace against the Cavs, still got to 230, which is an over. But I think that has a lot to do with struggling to stop a parade to the free throw line from both teams. So that is the concern here if you're going to take the under. But I would expect it to keep climbing a little bit. I think you can preach some patience here if you are going to take the under, and that you might be able to get it at like 235, 236. And just the Celtics' reputation as being able to just light it up the way they were at the beginning of the season might not be the case as much here, now that they have more of their full team back.
Yeah, and are also guarding the 3-point line way better, which is what matters with these two teams when they play. They're both shooting, in the top 5 in terms of the highest percentage of their field goal attempts from 3 and scoring most of their points from there. I mean, Boston's gotten a little bit better, a little bit more versatile since they've gotten bigger with those guys coming back. But the fact that they can defend the 3-point line to the degree that they can is really what I most count on. The fact that they're limiting opponents' fast break points as well is what I'm really worried about. If Tyrese Halliburton can't get the ball and go and get open threes in transition for his team, get offensive rebounds and get threes in sort of the helter-skelter mode, then they're not going to be able to really hang on offense with this team. That's the only way that I think they can really get points in their matchups versus Boston tonight. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us, coming back at you each and every weekday this season. So until we see you next, happy betting.